Hello, this is Keziah, Draenei Survival Hunter from Burning Blade US. This will be my first how-to Huntard series of survival tips and tricks for raiding PvE endgame content. The main topic today will be spec and how spec is affected by the gear you gain, i.e. crit/agi, as it scales with certain abilities. But first let's go over the basic setup of the Survival Hunter. The basic and accepted spec for the Survival Hunter in 3.3 is 3-14-53, or 0-17-53, or 0-14-56, and I would definitely suggest that if you are a new hunter or a lower geared hunter, that you use one of these specs exactly how I'm going to lay it out. Let's start with the survival tree since it is the meat of your spec overall. On your first tier you have 3 abilities: Improved Tracking, Hawkeye, and Savage Strikes. Now keeping in mind that this is a purely PvE build, 5 of 5 imp tracking is definitely the choice to make on this occasion. Hawkeye is useful in certain situations, but overall the usefulness of being able to stand farther away does not have the draw that it used to since they have changed sniper training. Savage Strikes, yeah, just don't get that. There is also a bit of confusion for some when it comes to imp tracking. Since a patch or two ago, Blizzard allowed for imp tracking not to be the complete pain in the neck that it was when you had to actually be tracking the type of mob or boss that you were fighting, and allowed for tracking any of the mentioned mob or boss types to apply the 5% damage buff, which is nice. The second tier has 4 abilities. Sure-footed and Entrapment are both mainly viable for PvP, so I'm not going to be spending any time on those. However, Trap Mastery and Survival Instincts are obvious choices for any PvE build. Trap Mastery is basically your choice for one reason, and that is the periodic tick of Black Arrow being increased by 30%. While Black Arrow isn't mainly used for its actual dot damage, this helps a great deal. And during heavy AoE fights, the increased damage from your 2 damage traps is very useful as well. Survival Instinct is an obvious choice because it increases the crit chance of your 2 heavy nuke spells, Explosive Shot and Steady Shot, by 4% when fully spec'd, so I would go 3 of 3 and 2 of 2 respectively. Third tier also has 4 abilities. Scatter Shot, Deflection, and Survival Tactics are all basic PvP skills, so the same applies as before. Survivalist increases your stamina by 10%, and while that would seem useless in basic PvE buff damage purely situations, you will see that it is a direct AP increase later down the line, so that's 5 of 5. Fourth tier is a good tier for us with 2 abilities. TNT is an amazing ability for the Survival Hunter because it increases the damage of our main nuke Explosive Shot by 6%. While the glory days of Explosive Shot causing a stun are gone, I nevertheless still think this is one of the most important talents in our tree. Lock and Load is also a meat and potatoes kind of talent for the survival tree. The basic rundown of Lock and Load is that you have a 6% chance on Black Arrow tick, or 100% chance on the Frost Trap trigger of proccing the effect, which essentially allows for 3 free explosive shots with no cooldown, no mana, or no ammo cost. I'll explain while spamming Explosive Shot during this proc is terrible in a later video, so for now understand that Lock and Load is your best proc as survival, so that's 3 of 3 and 3 of 3 also respectively. Fifth tier has 3 talents. Counterattack is unattainable in this spec, so don't worry about it. Hunter vs. Wild is where that stamina buff comes in handy by providing us with the attack power equal to 30% of our stamina, a nice addition to our already staggering AP numbers. That's 3 of 3. And Killer Instinct is basic, more crit, 3 of 3. Sixth tier has 2 abilities. Lightning Reflexes increases your total agility by 15%, and this is one of the main reasons why agility is god for a Survival Hunter, an obvious 5 of 5. Resourcefulness. This talent is contested as being unnecessary for a 3 of 3 because the uptime on Black Arrow, your main ability that procs Lock and Load, will allow for the maximum number of Lock and Load procs within that time. However, I use 3 of 3 since Lock and Load was moved purely to the RNG area, that's random number generator, and away from the internal cooldown area, because the more ticks of Black Arrow, the better. Pretty simple. 7th tier has 3 abilities. Wyvern Sting does not have very many practical boss fight applications, however the chain that comes next is the main reason for this talent. Basically, another CC ability is never really bad. Thrill of the Hunt is pretty straightforward. You get 40% of your mana back whenever you crit, which will be a lot. Exposed Weakness should be 2 of 3 for most Survival Hunters until you get up there in gear, but I'll talk about that later. Basically, 25% of your agi gets converted to AP, and this buff should have a near 100% uptime. You'll see in the video that I have 1 of 3, but again, I'll explain that later. 8th tier has 2 abilities. Noxious Sting is the payoff for Wyvern Sting, and its main use is the increase of all damage caused to targets afflicted by Serpent Sting by 3%. Obviously a great 3 of 3 choice. And Master Tactician, 10% chance to proc 10% extra crit for 8 seconds, sold, 5 of 5. 9th tier has 3 abilities. Point of No Escape is a PvP talent. Black Arrow is an ability that is both necessary for gaining Explosive Shot and a great buff to overall damage on top of being the main source of Lock and Load procs. 1 of 1. Sniper training is a bit tricky for heavy movement fights, but basically works like this. Stand still for 6 seconds and get a 6% buff to steady shot, aim shot, black arrow, and explosive shot for 15 seconds. So it's a good little buff. 10th tier is Hunting Party. If your group is having mana regen problems, get this. It provides replenishment, which gives 1% of the mana per 5 to 10 people of your party or raid for 15 seconds. However, if they don't need it and you are a low-geared hunter, I would utilize these points elsewhere. Your final tier is Explosive Shot. Get it. Period. 1 of 1. On to the Marksman tree. Keep in mind that this tree can be played with and moved around however you see fit, but there are some basic rules to follow here. Tier 1, you're going to pick up lethal shots no matter what spec variation you are. 5% free crit, thank you very much. 5 of 5. Focused aim is a use as necessary ability. If you are low on hit, hunters need 8% to hit boss targets. Spec as many points there as you need. Sacrifice points from Hunting Party first to go into this ability at low gear. Second tier. Careful aim is often overlooked by a new hunter, but is huge for endgame hunters. 100% of your intellect is converted to AP. Unbuffed, that puts me personally at 605 extra attack power from my intellect alone. Imp Hunter's Mark is only really useful if you have 3 or more hunters in your raid, so if you don't, it's not worth the sacrifice in my personal opinion. Also, 5 of 5 mortal shots equals win in this spec. Yes, I think I'll have some more crit damage, thank you very much. Our crit rating is retarded high, so the more crit damage the better. Third tier is a sparse one. Go for the Throat gives your pet 25 focus whenever you crit, which as I said should be all the time. And while Spec is survival, your pet might not be a huge amount of your DPS, the more damage it does the better. Good boy. Then there's Aim Shot. Get on the move, provides a Mortal Strike debuff, cutting the healing to the target in half, and is affected by Sniper training where the talent it shares a cooldown with, Multi-Shot, is not. And you can glyph it at a certain gear level to give you more of them. A win in my book. In the Beast Mastery tier, the optional talent of Aspect of the Hawk will help you get over that initial haste drought by providing scaling levels of haste on proc. 3 of 5 maximum for this talent. Now on to the more fun stuff, how you scale with your gear. There are a few slight changes I would recommend when speccing as your gear and stats increase dramatically over the gearing process. First is Exposed Weakness. At first you are using 2 of 3 because you usually start out with about 30% crit. This will give you a 100% uptime of the buff, so all is well. However, as your crit scales, for instance, I am currently sitting at 51.2% crit unbuffed, you need less of a chance to proc per crit because of the fact that you are critting far more often. The threshold for this is about 45%, which is a pretty high number. Once you get here, in raid you should be seeing around 54% crit with the buffs provided, so that should make your uptime very close to 100% for Exposed Weakness. The second major switch will come with Hunting Party versus Focused Aim for getting extra hit. At 2000 agility, you will get 20 agi per point in Hunting Party, and it only rises from there. So after you get around that much agi unbuffed, you're going to want to start gemming for hit as opposed to speccing for it, since you are gaining more from the talents than the actual gems. For instance, if I need 20 hit to hit my skill cap, I have a choice. Use a 20 hit gem, usually replacing a 20 agi gem, or take 1 point out of Hunting Party and place it into Focused Aim. I currently have 2343 agi unbuffed, so every point I lose in Hunting Party deprives me of 23 agi, where every gem I lose deprives me of 20. It's easy to see. Again, only fully spec into Hunting Party once you get around 1900 to 2000 agility, as there are greater DPS values to be found in other talents. I hope you found this helpful in your quest for the perfect rating spec. Once again, I am Keziah from Burning Blade US. Happy hunting!
It's time to stand your ground! The time is now! Don't be another victim! Take back what's fucking yours! Stay true to your convictions! No! Don't be another victim! Take back what's fucking yours!